kina semdol kake mofaseda.
Welcome to Talking in Stations, a podcast about EVE Online. I'm your host, Matterall. Today, we're going to talk about Northern Coalition and Initiative. They've been rivals over the last 2 years, and it looks like a new front is opening in that long rivalry. We're also going to talk about CSM Summit and how it just ended, and we're going to check in to see what kind of mood everybody was in when they came out of there. Of course, Bernjita is happening. The MER report is out with some interesting findings, and we'll talk about stuff going on in the South as well. Okay, let's get started with this episode. I want to say hi to Carneros.
Good morning.
And Elise Randolph.
Hey, happy to be here.
Great to see you guys. And today we have Jurius with us.
Hey, everybody.
And for guests, and they can participate in this next section of game news, we have from the Initiative, Pando.
Hey.
And Dark Shines.
How's it going?
And from the CSM and Northern Coalition is Killah.
Hello.
All right. Thanks, everybody. What's that, Carneros?
Great to have you guys with us.
Absolutely. So let's actually start with the CSM Summit, because I think that just wrapped up what was it? When did that wrap up?
The last meetings were on Thursday. I left on Saturday very early morning.
Wow, so that was really a couple days ago. Okay, Killah, what happened there? What can you tell us?
I mean, most CSM already tweeted that they thought it was a very good summit. Even the ones that have been on the CSM for longer were very happy with the outcome. We did touch on, which I was extremely happy about, we did touch on some very important stuff that we consider important, like the economy, the really big economy, and also capital balance, which is great. And what we've touched on those previously, but this time it really felt like CCP cared, because for both big talks, we had pretty much all of the EVE leadership attending as well, or the CCP leadership rather, and they, it really seemed like they were listening. They took down a lot of notes. They asked a lot of questions. They were really engaged in the conversation, and that makes me very optimistic that they seem to be high priority problems for them as well, and that they'll do some stuff in that regard. So that's what it felt like to me. And obviously the CSM Summit is always a bunch of fun too. It's exhausting. It's just meetings from Monday to Thursday, from the morning to the evening pretty much. But usually we go out to bars afterwards and hang out with some of the devs in private. Some of them usually come out with us to bars, CCP Rise quite often, and some other people. And that's always a very fun time.
What strikes me as funny is they have these long meetings all day long, and then they still go and hang out with you guys at bars.
Yeah, I mean, the bars are always a very nice setting to talk a bit like off the record, so to say, because all the meetings and everything are being recorded, and so that it's all sort of business. But when you do it in the evening in the bar, you can basically just speak your mind. You don't have to really, you don't really have to care about what you say. You can just say whatever you want, and can have some more sort of private stuff. Just talk to the devs personally is always good. So I like that.
So I think you're not the only one that's been optimistic. We've heard from a few other people. And help me out, guys, here. Jurius, you said that Suetonia was pretty positive, and we know that even Aerith was positive about the condition that CSM is in after it's been repaired over the last 3 years.
Yeah, I have to say,
also seemed really positive. Sorry to cut you off there.
I have to say that I'm really, really excited about what's happening under CCP Burn right now. Things are looking really, really good.
And Elise, you were saying?
I was saying Jintan also seemed really positive, and he's been on the CSM for quite some time. So, as Killah was saying, he's one of the people that's been there for quite a few terms.
Yeah, from what I heard, Jintan and Brisk both were actually pretty optimistic.
Well, I think that's. I think anytime a group feels heard, I think anytime a group feels heard, they are pretty optimistic. So I guess the working relationship between CCP and CSM is in a good place. Is that fair to say?
Yes, very much so.
All right. And I think my intuition tells me, and so do many, I won't call them leaks, but just people giving information. One of the things that was discussed was the overall path of EVE Online. I'm assuming they're going to be making some major announcements here at the next big EVE meet, which will be Amsterdam. Is that March or May?
Yeah, March 23rd to 24th.
Right. So I expect
pretty much 1 month out.
Let me write that down. So I expect there'll be some announcements there. All year long, they're going to go on tour. CCP will, going to, 5 or 6 different locations. You can find those on Facebook, or CCP has a world tour page. And every one of those, they'll probably be making some announcements. But I expect the Amsterdam one to be probably front-loaded, right? To put a bunch of stuff out there, I imagine.
Well, it depends on what they've got to say, but it also depends a little bit on how much appetite the player base has for new information. If they had been given a bunch and were still processing it, they might hold stuff back. But right now, there's a lot of appetite for information on where this game is going. So my assumption is they're gonna provide us with pretty much whatever they feel is far enough along to talk to the players about. They might be holding some of their powder back for the next 30 days and creating some dramatic effect at Amsterdam that tends to spike marketing attention and PR attention if you do that. So they might kind of be quietish for the next 30 days, but I expect some stuff. Or they might find that they need to precede some of the information a week or so before in order to have people in the right mind frame to absorb what they're going to hear at Amsterdam.
How did they used to do that? Did they make announcements leading up?
Well, back in the day, we would sit down in meetings and say, what do we have coming up for this time block? What are we going to have ready to deliver, and what are we going to have ready to talk about? And then you'd look at your bookends and say, when do we have to have spoken about something because we're going to have to put it on Singularity test server anyway, and they're going to see it anyway, so let's talk about it before we just shock them. Okay, now that frames one bookend. When, when's this event? Now, how are we going to distribute our messaging in between that? What should be the flow? Who should speak for each thing? How should we do this? And you just have to work through it. It's just work.
But I mean, the announcements used to happen before FanFest, and then when everybody went to FanFest, they would talk about. No, it was reverse. They would save all the announcements for FanFest, make all these giant announcements, and then talk to people right before they left.
Well, you tune it a little bit each time too, because I remember my first eFanFest, they didn't give the big bombshells until the keynote, and the keynote was at the end.
Right.
And then the next time they're like, we're going to do it differently this time. We're going to put the keynote first. And that worked so well. They've done that each time since then. And I mean,
and they did that. They did that so they could make the announcements and then talk to the players about it. That was the idea. We're wasting an opportunity. Yeah. But I have to admit, I liked saving the the initial instincts were save the best for last. Give all these people this hype video at the end of FanFest and then launch them back into their real worlds.
One thing that also really made us optimistic is the first night out on Saturday when most of us arrived. We went into a bar, the one right below the CCP offices, and they invited a whole bunch of devs as well. And like half the people that showed up from CCP there, I'd never seen before. And most of them were new devs that were just hired recently. It really seems like the public perception was that sort of CCP has just been firing people and they haven't really done anything in terms of hiring new people. But the amount of new teams and shit that they've hired is incredible. They've invested a lot in that. And they also wanted to show that off a bit with the Eve Pulse video that was released, I think, yesterday or the day before, where CCP Burger went through the CCP offices a bit and sort of showed everybody what they were working on. That was also a sign to us as a CSM that things can't be going that bad. If things are going bad, you don't hire. I don't know how many I don't actually know how many new people they hired, but there were a lot of new people, and that's really cool.
And yeah, that's a really important thing that you mentioned, because Eve players have a really close connection with the devs, more so than most games, right? So all the devs, you kind of know who they are and stuff. But in the gaming industry, from what I'm told, the turnover is really relatively pretty high. So like every 2 or 3 years, you have a lot of turnover. So whenever a CCPer leaves, or a prominent CCPer leaves that's been there for like 5 or 10 years, people go really doom and gloom when they've really just been living longer than the industry average.
It's so funny that we are looking at this whole game is predicated on corporations in space, basically, and players running these corporations. And at the same time, we look at CCP, an actual corporation, and we have the same kinds of feelings about that people have with stocks. I have a friend who's an analyst for some mutual fund, and his job is to look at companies and really scrutinize what's going on with them, with their books, with their personnel, and looking at all little hints to try to predict the future of how much of that company to own. Some of you guys probably know this a lot better than I do. But we do that with EVE Online, don't we? We keep looking at all the little hints about where this game is going.
Yeah, we tend to mostly pick up the negative hints, but yeah.
Yeah. I think it speaks to the nature of seeing this as an investment. I keep saying that, but yeah, we do kind of the good news kind of doesn't get a lot of play, does it?
It's always like that, I think. People that are mad are generally a lot louder usually than people that but yeah, so I really see as well. And it's always a big question, because there's those people that just don't believe you when you tell them this kind of stuff, that are just like, nah, they're just showing you something wrong, and then in reality it's all going to shit. But if me, I'm just a one-termer so far in terms of CSM. I've only been in there for 1 term. But if even the people that have been there, like Steve, who has been in the CSM for 5 years in a row now, I think, and then people like Jintan, who's been there for a while, and Aerith, and all of them, they really felt like the company felt a lot more alive than it did in the recent summits. And that just is a good sign to us. You can say what you want. I mean, it's our perception.
Yeah, and Falcon said the same thing when he was talking after the Alliance tournament. He said, even though this is a down announcement that's going to disappoint a lot of people, I'm really positive more positive than he has been in years on CCP and EVE. And I think I asked him what that meant, and he seemed to, I don't want to get it wrong, so I'm just going to say my interpretation of what he said was that it's a combination of things. It's the focus on EVE, but also probably the new people. I don't want to attribute those comments to him, but I think that's what it was. The focus on EVE, the new money coming into the company to make things happen. I guess it takes new money to bring in new devs.
I don't think there's new money coming in from.
You don't think so?
I don't think that's part of what that was. I think the money went to the investors to pay them off. But I think there's enough cash flow in the company to support what they're doing right now.
Well, maybe
That's not insider info.
Right. But the new financial realities might have changed. Do you think, since they were bought by a company that's interested in MMOs?
What I think has changed is the mindset of the owners, because previously the owners were sort of an investment fund or some shit like, something like that. Whereas now it's a gaming company as well. So they probably look at the whole thing a lot different than a group of people that just have a bunch of money and wanted to invest into something to get some returns.
I agree. I think that one of the things you see in business all the time is that when you have a VP of finance or an investor at the head of your company, and I work in IT, you always see that spend is a lot more conservative. Whereas if you have somebody who's interested in the direction in what you're doing and understands the value of the people that you're hiring, you're going to get that support financially.
There's also, and then we should probably move on, but there's also the idea that the last year and a half or year and a half is spent grooming itself to look purchasable. So those financial realities might have been a bit stricter than, once the purchase is made, then if you think about it, it's kind of like starving yourself to get super skinny for your wedding, and then afterwards you just kind of like let it go.
Well, and there's an emotional overhang that you deal with. Now they've taken care of a massive achievement that they needed to do. They're going to feel good about that. They've got some more freedom going forward. They got a fresh start. They got some optimism, got a little momentum. In the meantime, the player base, on the other hand, it's human nature that we remember the bad parts easier than the good parts. It's a self-preservation instinct to that if something bad happens, you're going to remember it better. So that stuff is going to stack up in your mind, and you start to get nervous. Yeah. Communication's the key to get out of that cycle.
One of the things that I wanted to look into, and maybe we'll do a whole show on it because I think it's really important, and it kind of ties into Burn Jita, is retention issues. People who start playing this game, how can we keep them playing this game to the point where they become addicted to it, right? Like people will eventually click into EVE Online and find out what the real fun of it is. It just takes a while to get to that point. And how do you keep people in before they go?
I actually talked to Brisk not too long ago about an idea how I see or where I see the problems with that actually. Because I think the number one reason for that is EVE is a PvP game, but like the only things they get told to do in the new play experience is actually PvE, right? So whenever they do PvE and then they get forced into PvP, it's always a bad experience, and then they end up, quitting the game because of that. And I think there should be a PvP new player experience. And I actually had some, ideas and talked about it with Brisk. I'm not sure if he actually, I think it was a little bit too much to bring it up at the CSM or anything, but I don't know.
Well, it's come up. I'll cite Open Comms because I was listening to it the other day, and there was Brisk and Rain, I think, were fighting off, I don't know, somebody. But they were fighting about that old trope that Burn Jita is not necessarily a bad thing. It could be a good thing because if you get ganked, you're more likely to stay in the game. Now, my understanding is that might have been said by CCP Rise, and I don't know if it was tongue-in-cheek or if it's a true fact, but it was definitely finessed by CCP Fozzie when we asked him that it's not really actually when you get ganked that you want to play this game longer. It's that when you get shot at, and that's as much as they would say. And that makes a lot of sense because that little change is a huge difference. If you look at little kids when they're running from their parents, they're engaging that adrenaline of chase. That's super exciting and super fun. But if the parent were to trip them and then jump on top of them, it probably wouldn't have been that fun. And so it would be a whole different thing, I think.
I also remember a story that they had told when they were looking at redesigning war decks and rebalancing war decks, where they followed a handful of capsuleers, but one guy in particular who got ganked and then, decided to get his sweet revenge and planned for like 2 or 3 weeks or whatever. And then he killed the guy that killed him using kill rights. and then just never logged in ever again for like 2 years or something like that.
Wait, he did it and then he took off?
Yeah, so the guy got his revenge for getting ganked and then just never logged in again.
He won Eve, huh?
Yeah.
He played
So
Spotify's like trailer.
Yeah, so it's like a really complex issue when it comes to retention. Like we've always been told, retention goes up a huge amount if you interact with another player in a meaningful way, which makes total sense because EVE Online's a very confusing game and you have no idea what it is because pretty much the only description is this crazy sandbox. Well, what the heck's a sandbox, right? Like what can I do in the sandbox? You don't even know what types of things you can create. You don't even know what's there for you. You don't know what options are until you run into another player and you see what he's done. And then you can start to see a bigger picture. And then you can see what another player has done. And the more players you're introduced to, the better the picture is as in like what you can do in the game and what you can't do.
There must be something to what mindset you come into EVE playing. Like when I heard about EVE Online, it was incredibly deadly. The owners of the game, the makers of the game, let you get away with anything, including demolishing corporations with espionage and stuff like that. And so I looked at the game and I thought, yeah, I know what I'm getting into. But if you're saying, yeah, I want to belong to this exploratory, sci-fi universe and I want to collect my few things here and there, and you're not really coming into it thinking that it's a very punitive game, then it's going to be like cold water on your experience. But it depends on how you look at it coming in.
Well, when I first installed EVE, I thought it's more like EVE Valkyrie, right? WASD, shoot some people in space, like no fucking politics or any of that stuff. Like I wasn't even interested in MMOs or any of that. So even if you get surprised, it's a completely different game. There's still potential of keeping people around.
Yeah, one of the last things here is that Noisy Gamer says that if you're engaging in PvP, you most likely are part of a player group, and if you're playing with people, you are way more likely to stay subbed, and that logic is perfectly true. And I think that's it. So meetups belonging to corporations with people in it, all that kind of stuff. A social network that wraps around you in this game is critical to keeping you. It mitigates a lot of the damage done to you psychologically, but also keeps you interested in cooperative gameplay.
Yeah, I think so. You said earlier, like someone who's getting shot at has a higher chance of staying around. I think you can even go further and say someone whose friend is getting shot at is having an even higher chance of sticking around, right? Because it's a social game, and I think that's the key factor. And that's also what's missing in the new player experience. I never played it, but it probably says at the end the best way to go about it and is joining a corporation and stuff. But I think that doesn't go far enough, right? It would be nice to hook up some new players so they actually make those connections like in a natural kind of way.
Well, that's why groups like Brave Newbies were really, really successful early on, which led to groups like Karma Fleet and Pandemic Horde, because basically from day one, you just throw people into the deep end of the pool and see what happens. And the people that are interested in PvP, like they get instantly addicted to it, right? And they're just down to experience that. And that's actually the very, very old Goonswarm model way back in the day was, hey, you just joined, here's a rifter, just run at one of these bad guys, and your ammo or their ammo costs more than your ship, so we'll just keep giving you ships and it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the big advantages to, joining large organizations, especially organizations with a teaching focus like Brave Newbies or some of the larger corps and goons. And of course, EVE University, who make their whole job being neutral from the politics and offering everybody a chance to really get a chance to experience all the different areas of space. They've got campuses in high sec, low sec, null sec, and really offering things like SRP at a level where people can afford to just throw themselves out there, blow shit up, pardon my my French there, but get your stuff blown up and then come back and know that it's okay because you're going to have more ships to go out with. And I tell everybody the biggest way to get over that hump of how do I get into PvP is have 10 ships in your hangar. Go blow one up. You got 9 more left. It doesn't feel so bad.
You know, I think that doesn't work for everyone though. So for me, for example, if I have like 100 of the same ship and I keep blowing it up, it feels pointless then, right? I mean, what is it about then? Like if you don't care about the ship you're losing and the other guy doesn't care about his ship he's losing, like what am I undocking for then? Like that doesn't get me to undock at least.
Yeah,
it has to be some value at the very least. For very new players, it might even also work the other way, right? I mean, to some degree, it for sure works, but it stops working at some point too.
Yeah, there's a scale level there where if you get too high into that, at some point it loses its risk because you're not experiencing the Eve effect, which is that you can lose everything.
So, speaking of finding groups and the social aspect of EVE Online, CCP's put out some, I believe they're on Facebook, so a little harder to find, but they put out 3 or 4 now videos that are meant for new players and new player retention, which is kind of interesting. One of those is how to find a friend. So it really shows you the stuff that we take for granted, which is how you send an email to someone that you might want to meet, or how you talk in local, what groups you join, how you join them. If you don't find your people, do you move on to a different group? And so all that kind of stuff. So all the little stuff that's social that we take for granted is totally new to new players. I forget actually how vulnerable new players are at being intimidated out of the game. I was helping this new player out the other day, and he was it took all of an hour of me typing to him as he was streaming on how to get him to mine a rock and to actually have to go to a market to sell it, and then how to reprocess it. Just all the sheer amount of stuff we take for granted for things that are second thoughts, or just these really complex series of things they have to do and logic they have to click into in order to just do the most basic things.
The whole reason I'm on YouTube, that's what I make my YouTube videos about, is how to get new players up that wall of data that they have to parse in order to make sense of what's happening on their screen.
Wild. All right, so look out for those tutorials on Facebook. Look out for EVE Amsterdam's coming March 21st through 23rd. Probably be some announcements there. It's nice to see CSM's had a good summit and that everybody's kind of positive on the direction of EVE Online. At least there's no tension there. There's one last thing I wanted to cover here, and that is a new tool, right? Jurius, do you want to tell us about that new tool?
Yeah, so I'm certainly not the first person to propose something like it, but at EVE Vegas this last year, I stood up and asked during the Little Things panel, as a lot of people did. I was not by any means the first person to recommend anything, but I asked, because I spent a lot of time teaching and making YouTube videos about how to orient yourself on the game. One of the things that I've always missed, because I've had the experience of working in IT, walking people sight unseen over the phone through, okay, now click here. All right, now enter this. All right, now click this other thing. And missing a tool in EVE that would work like the prompts in the NPE, where it would either highlight or flash or put an outline around the thing I wanted them to click, no matter how they had set up their overview. So it didn't matter if their overview was in the top right or bottom left. It didn't matter if they had their capacitor on the top or bottom, or how they'd organized their Neocom short links. I wanted a way to say, this is the thing I want you to click on. And I was really, really surprised when CCP Carker turned around and did it really, really quickly. Like she approached me in January to say, here's an early working model. What does this look like for you? And is there any feedback you'd like to provide? And when she turned around and released it for public review on CC, it's available there now. And you should go check it out. It's amazing. I was blown away because the turnaround was just so fast on it.
She's like a little magical being, isn't she?
Absolutely.
Big fan.
Yeah, it's going to be a great tool to help explain stuff, especially to like if you have a friend, you're sitting on like TeamSpeak or something, and you want to just tell him, "Hey, dude, now go to this menu," and he's like, "Well, where do I find that?" And you have to like guide him through the neocom and all that. You can just link him the menu straight away, and they can click on it, and it'll take them. So that's pretty nice.
Man, that's powerful stuff. And that's already on CC, you said?
Yeah, it's already on CC.
Man, that's great.
Now,
All
one
right.
thing that's one thing to add, though, is that it has to be activated from outside of the client because it's just a working test, and there's no commitment from CCP right now that they're going to put it in the game permanently. They're just feeling this one out. So this is also new ground in terms of them showing us a non-finished feature that they may or may not roll out. So this is kind of virgin territory.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Well, we'll look out for it. Next thing I want to cover real quick before we get into the player news is the monthly economic report is out, the MER, they call it. And Jurius has had a look at it for us. What can you tell us? This is going to be an interesting one.
Well, there's a lot, and I'll run through it really quickly, but the biggest thing by far is that the local outage that happened in January and the Bodder RMT purge removed 140 trillion ISK from the game in January. That's 140,000 billion ISK. It's kind of hard to get your head around that big a number.
Yeah, I can't even... but what was that, 140 trillion?
140 trillion ISK. So to give the rundown, we started off at end of December. Sorry, I had to scroll down my sheet. We started off at the end of December with a positive of 35.5 trillion. And at the end of January, it was negative 95.4 trillion. That's a movement of 140 trillion available ISK in game. The ISK delta is huge.
Okay, how did that much money leave the game?
That was CCP going in with the ban hammer and hitting people really, really hard. Almost all of that money loss from the game happened from character.
Yeah, you're cutting out a bit.
So yeah,
character what?
From character wealth.
So Noisy Gamers pointed this out in the past as well, that the actual biggest faucet, and that is basically money draining away. Sorry, drain, not faucet. So faucet's when money comes into the game, and drain is when the money goes out of the game. And we're talking about ISK money, not real money. So one of the biggest drains is players leaving the game, either getting kicked out or just retiring, and they actually take off when they don't give their stuff to somebody else. And that money is just locked up and gone from the actual economy. So 140 trillion is a godly large number. So the people who were, I mean, if you have that much ISK, you can't really do anything outside of the game with ISK. You're going to want to like try to get real money traded for that so that you can come out with something. And I just didn't realize those numbers are so big. So the guys getting banned for RMT, real money transactions, selling in-game money for real money, it looks like they had a ton of money.
Yeah, and wallets
That's
being
a lot of
zeroed out.
people.
Was it, how many was it? They said it was it 1,600 or accounts?
It was about 1,600 accounts, yeah.
And
Wow.
But if it is 1,600 accounts, that's in addition to that, that's going to be a number of corporations and a number of alliances potentially that also have money pulled out of that. So that doesn't mean that 1,600 people had 140 trillion taken. It could have been that some of it was taken from the players, some from the corps.
Actually, the money doesn't bear that out, unfortunately. The money shows that corporations held steady, and there was even a slight increase. But what happened was that all of the moneyed individuals in those corporations that might have been yanked, or anybody who was seriously profiting from botting, their personal wallets are gone or negatived out. And that huge number might be skewed by the fact that often CCP doesn't just take all your money away. They put your wallet in the negative.
Well, if we tie this back to the earlier discussion that says groups help players stay in the game longer, it's probably a good thing that the corporations are still intact like that. That's yeah.
By the
Wow.
way, Noisy Gamer also makes a neat point there in chat that if you compare that 140 trillion being taken out of the game, compare that to all the Plex market inside of the game, that is at 160 trillion. Those are almost equal numbers. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's staggering. That's an insane amount of money gone from the game.
So the ISK velocity has almost reached its all-time low with this dip. Right now, the lowest point in the last several years was about August of 2016. There was a really, really big fall in 2016, and we have almost hit that low level.
Okay, what's ISK velocity?
How much trade and growth or movement there is on the amount of ISK flowing.
What would that mean to a common person? Just a simple person.
Simple explanation. On a day when confidence in markets is really, really high in the real world, you'll see the Dow Jones and all these other markets, TSX, trading really, really fast. How much money changes hands in a single day is your ISK velocity essentially.
So it's basically it's the measurement of how the money is moving around in EVE Online.
Yeah, exactly.
So the money has slowed down in EVE Online? Is it more stationary then?
It's fallen off in a huge way because a potential money that could have changed hands in terms of market volume simply disappeared.
Wild. Well, I wonder if there's any market implications to that money just disappearing, or in this game without inflation, if that makes any difference at all.
Well,
it's kind of like a tree falling.
It did have a market impact because several regions saw sort of anomalous giant dips in their market trade value and in their monies. In fact, the Forge, most specifically, I mean, obviously for good reason, the trade balance and market value fell by 4 trillion ISK for trade balance and 14.7 trillion ISK for market trade value. So that represents stuff that was taken off the market as a process of destroying the proceeds of botting an RMT.
Are you saying that the Imperium is botting?
No, I'm saying that market that was available for trade and items that have been purchased were yanked from the game by the devs, and that was represented not just in character wallets, but also in assets.
I don't know what to make of it. I'm trying to be controversial here and saying, do we have fingers to point at certain areas of the game? Can we?
Actually, Delve up in almost every area except Bounties is up too. Delve's up pretty much everywhere, so they're still doing fine.
Well, I meant like
unless Delve is secretly, unless the Imperium is secretly botting in the Forge to hide it.
Possibly.
Just being ridiculous for a moment.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, all this economic news, I want to make it have some kind of relationship to the people's perceptions out there. So, whether it's drones or the North or Delve or now Scalding Pass, wherever, it doesn't matter. Like, is there anything in the MER that points to anything politically?
No.
Yeah. So the biggest movers in terms of nullsec regions were Ketch, Deterid, Isteria, Fountain, Gemini, Impasse, Innsmother, and Pureblind. So those are the regions that saw multi-100 billion ISK movements, either in the negative or positive. So we're seeing a lot of movement in areas in the north and in the, I guess it would be west. And we're also seeing a lot of growth in mining in areas like Innsmother and Derek, to the tune of almost 1 trillion ISK in Innsmother and 600 billion ISK in Derelic and Fountain.
Who's in Innsmother? Is it Skill U? And they must be renting that out if it's them.
I think it's Skill U, yeah. And yet there are areas where net exports are way down. Like Essence is down almost 3 trillion ISK. Let me pull up the next one here. Oh, yeah, Lonetrek, and high second interior are way down for net imports as well. There's big movements from production as well. In fact, the only area where Delve is down is 4.4 trillion ISK down in production values.
All right. Well, speaking of speaking of base, economics and how economics feed the military machines of these empires, the Imperium yesterday told us on the Meta Show that their plan is to basically, now that Red Alliance is out of period basis, to rent it out at essentially no cost and to compete and undercut BOT, which is Brothers of Tangra, which belongs to, NC Dot and PL, or at least it did. I think it's mostly NC Dot now.
And NC Dot.
Yeah, it's NC Dot, right?
Yep, it's just NC Dot. Though I will toot my own horn. I did come up with the name. So we sold off all of our renter space after just before the Phoebe jump changes back in the day. So,
well, it was Sons of Tangra were associated. Tell us what Sons of Tangra and Brothers of Tangra are all about.
So back in the day, the people that lived in Fountain Core, there was this one Bulgarian group that honestly, they're probably still there. They just live in Fountain Core. That's what they do. And their alliance, one of the corps was the Bulgarian Mafia Squad. And their alliance was Sons of Tangra. And they were like PL allies when I first joined PL and back when we held Fountain. And that was the last time we really wanted to own space. And so as we were getting new renter space, we need to come up with a name. And obviously Dronelands, the meme is that everyone there is a botter. So we thought Brothers of Tangra would be a great ticker, because it's bot, and just a nice little throwback to old PL allies.
Yeah, I remember Brothers of Tangra. They were kind of like the police force that kind of went around Fountain to protect the renting, and then that allowed PL to go and do things.
Yeah, and honestly, those dudes probably, if you're looking at Fountain Core, they probably just still live there. I'm sure Pando can give more credence to that. The dudes that lived in Fountain Core are pretty resilient, and they just live in those like 3 systems and run Serpentis missions.
Well, the second part of the Imperium's plan, as was laid out yesterday by the Mittani and Aerith, is there will probably be some form of attack on Brothers of Tangra Sov space in the future. He kind of just winked at that.
Yeah, it's something that they've tried to do before at an organizational level. They've tried to create their own, or the Imperium has tried to create their own renter alliance to undercut everyone else. But, it's really tricky because unless you offer to move everyone's stuff, the people that are in those systems, what I've found out through years of trying to get them to get evicted is they'll stay there and they'll just go AFK for a little bit. And when the new owners come in, then they'll just say, okay, who do I give my money to today? So they don't really care. Like, they rather live in their systems than anything else. And I'm sure a few people like move over, but period basis is kind of annoying to get to.
Yeah.
In terms of logistics.
We should probably turn it over to the FCs to talk about this sort of thing, but I just want to say, doesn't this seem like a nice plan on paper? We'll undercut them economically by attracting their people, and then we'll go and make their lives miserable, making it impossible for them to relax in their territory. And that 2-pronged attack should bring us a lot of wealth.
It's a super like EFT style campaign, right? Like it sounds like it should work really, really well. And like if you're playing a game like Civilization or something, this would be literally how you would win. But sometimes execution, you can't really count on how players are going to be reacting because the players don't necessarily make logical decisions. Like it would be super logical for a renter to be like, yo, this space is under attack. this other space further away is A, safer, and B, cheaper. So I'll just go there. But the players, as I'm sure we can all attest to, don't make sound decisions a lot of the time.
The X factors are the emotional attachments to certain systems, certain regions, the assets that you already have in place. All that stuff would keep you wanting to stick around the area rather than just look at the pure economics of it.
So there's an interesting question I'd like to pose to everybody. One of the things that comes out with the MER is graphs on peak concurrent players. In some areas that I never expected to see huge growth in month over month saw a big spike, specifically Oasa and the Kalevala expanse, as well as Imancy and Tenerife. The numbers there in January were up hugely, like very visible.
Isn't that Horde?
Is that Horde area?
Oh, Kalevala is, the rest isn't, I think. I don't know who Oasa belongs to. But yeah, Kalevala expands is Horde, the rest is someone else, I think.
Yeah, Oasa is deep drone regions. And then
Kalevala had, in addition to having the Horde there, it had like space violence and I think maybe TNT and some folks. Would that count people coming through in fleets? Yeah, that would be part of the statistic.
Yeah, so those are invaders. So, but also Tenerife is maybe has an influx of Russians going there now because they're now forming on the borderlands. We'll get to that in a minute. First, let's actually skip Bernjita and talk about the initiative's deployment to Hakonen. We have some guests here for us. To remind you, we have Pando, Dark Shines, both from Initiative, and we have Killah from NC. Why don't we throw it to Dark Shines? Been sitting here quietly. Can you tell us like what this deployment is, when it started, what you expect to get out of it?
Yeah, sure. So we deployed in the middle of the week on Wednesday with our EU team. We moved just under 700 people from Fountain to Hakonen. Got followed with some US time zone moves, which didn't quite make it. But we've been moving people into Hakonen the last couple of days. Basically, the idea is just to create content, get as much kills as we can, get some of our newer FCs the experience of fighting under a super umbrella, which is pretty important for an FC to have. And yeah, just kind of have fun. It's a longer term deployment, so it's a bit of effort gone into it, but so far it's been pretty fun. Obviously, the super umbrella makes things difficult, but that's all part of it. So.
Well, what people maybe misunderstand about this, it's not like a campaign in the old school sense, like you deploy and you go all in and try to whatever. People are already talking about reffing keepstars and stuff like this. Like, no fucking way we're gonna ref keepstars under that super cap umbrella. But like, this is a very long-term thing, right? It's more like an opening of another stager, right? Because there was rumors about Panfam trying to make this, their own version of Delph, which is obviously unacceptable. And we were looking for a secondary stager anyway. And I decided to go for Hakonen. And hostile forces are hyped to no end at the moment. Like, they're forming for like even medium posses yesterday, I think it was. Like almost 1,000 dudes. And we are still in the process of setting up, right? So the thing hasn't even started yet. But there's going to be some really good fights coming out of this, I'm pretty sure.
Well, yesterday, again, we were listening to Dark Shines, I think it was on the Meta Show, said that you had kind of shut the place down, like there were no Rorquals around. Is that still true? Or is what's...
I'm pretty sure there's Rorquals here, there's Rorquals there, right?
Yeah, yesterday it was pretty quiet. Today it heated up a bit again. So I guess we'll see how it goes over the next few. I guess it's dependent on time zone as well. Like, if we're active, then people probably aren't going to be mining. If we're not as active, then people might feel safer.
Killah B, what's going on the other side? Are you guys, are we hyped up, as is said by Pando?
Yes. I mean, it's always cool when people deploy right to your doorstep. It means low effort content for us, and
It's like food
it's always
delivery.
fun. Well, it's not necessarily food, and it aren't fucking, they're not bad. So they are definitely finding their ways around, and lots of the concepts that they brought up with them are very heavily sort of focused around the whole bush thing, which is, you can always drop a bunch of supers on a Suka fleet, but you won't kill that much because they can just bush out. But yeah, I like it. I was pretty happy that shortly after the test deployment to Eugenin, somebody else deployed right to our doorstep, because I was starting to think, oh shit, where are we going to go after the CSM summit is over? What can we do for content? And well, now we don't really have to do much. We'll see, like Pando said, we'll see how things go over the next couple of days. It's going to be interesting to see when they are fully settled in. And our people, there's always some sort of hubris involved, which is the thing that worries me the most. Is we've been just kind of dropping supers and titans on almost every timer, or at least have formed them up. And I'm getting a bit worried already that some guys like, haha, dude, there's like a 20-man init gang here. I'm just going to drop them my titan at like 0400 EVE time or some shit like that. And then he's going to eat dick. But, that's also part of the thing. It's probably going to be some stupid people dying, and then hopefully that will remind everybody to be a bit more respectful.
Well,
and it has gotten huge with initiative mercenaries as well. I think between the two alliances, it's like 7K, 8K characters almost. So definitely not something you can underestimate.
We just moved a couple dudes over actually from IM to Init.
Oh, great! Is it like a training corp for you guys, or training alliance?
Yeah, well, so it's basically IM is more like the proving ground, right? So that there might be if it's a very strong corp that's joining and we know they fit culturally, we might make an exception, let them into Init right away, but it's very, very rare, right? So usually they always have to go through IM. And some corps might be too proud for that move too, right? They're like, oh, we can't join a feeder alliance first. And then that already doesn't even fit, really, right? So so people always join IM first, and then once they show they have some skills, they've got some numbers for fleets and stuff. But basically, we don't make any we don't differentiate between the two alliances. It's both in it, right? I don't even it's just a ticker that's different, basically.
It never really comes up when you're doing things. It did matter when you had towers and stuff, but now it's Citadel, ACL beacons and jump bridges and everything else. Like it's not a big deal anymore.
I think it's really interesting the way, if you want to just compare two different alliances, two different groups, and two different deployments, just the way that you guys are framing this one. It's like, hey, we're starting off slow. We're going to be here for the long run. We're not going to make too many waves, but we're just going to have a lot of content, compared to Tappy's Eugenin deployment, where they're like, oh, we're going to come in and we're going to fuck shit up. And then that just fizzled out really quickly. So it's interesting to see how two different alliances, one like kind of like initiative, obviously more PvP oriented and more refined, I guess, in terms of plans. See how you guys handle similar types of deployments, or at least similar in terms of geography.
Well, I mean, like when you with NC in a PL, we've all been fighting for years and years and years, and to come into a region that has the NC and PL and now Pandemic Horde to some extent super umbrella in it, and think that you can just roll someone over like in the first couple of weeks is, it's insane. That's not how EVE works. It's just not going to happen. So I think we're just being pretty realistic about it, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Yeah, it's a cool contrast in different deployments. I had a right giggle as Euros over the difference between the two deployments, considering they're very, very close to like geographically. So I guess you guys have your pinkies out in this deployment. You're more sophisticated.
By the way, when I said it was like food delivery, I guess it could also be like a burglar coming into your house. Like, it depends on how well it goes.
Yeah, that's sort
You're
of the
allowed to be
thing.
biased, Matterall. When we're talking about NC, you're allowed to be biased. Also, we're outnumbering Killah B 2-1 right now, so you can take his side today.
Okay,
You always did a great job being neutral, so
Thank you.
let's make an exception today.
Thank you for letting me off the hook. Also want to say when Killah B is using the metaphor to say that an NC bad drop would be some guy eating dick, that's actually Thai food of some sort, isn't it? That's what he meant. Okay.
It's just one of those things that tends to set in very quickly, especially in the first couple of days. We obviously present ourselves very confident towards this deployment, towards our members. But sometimes what the member likes to forget is when the FCs are confident, when we do stuff, we usually have the backup, we have the intel and everything that we can do what we do without being in too much risk, or at least have the necessary forces behind us to do it. And they just, all they see, because they don't really see any of the background work happening, all they see is, oh, look, this guy just dropped his Titan on a 50-man init gang on his own. Surely I can do that as well. And then he just dies. And he's like, well, he just did that 2 days ago. Why can't I do it? So that's really what I always try to emphasize the most when we do these kind of early, show of forces. Like Pando said yesterday, for like a medium tower, we formed like 800 people or something, which is obviously like there's no way we were expecting any sort of real fight out of that, because there's just nothing you can do at that point. So those kind of things are mostly just show of force and showing the members as well, hey, we stand strong, we stand confident. What it really comes down to is what things look like in a week from now, or maybe in 2 weeks from now. Because obviously, we have a lot of renters in this area as well, and they're generally very poor at communicating. So what I always tell the renters is, hey, if you guys are capable of giving some basic information, like, hey, I'm tackled by 2 init sabers in this system, I have a sign up and you can invite me to your fleet, then I can probably help you out. But most renters only go as far as to spam help, I'm tackled in the intel channel, and then just don't respond to you at all. Like those kind of people you just can't help. They just die. But we're obviously trying to keep at least the NC, PL, Horde sort of people. We hope to give them as much possibility to make money as we can. So that's a bit of a tricky thing. Yeah, I think it's going to be fun either way. I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to get better at fighting bush comms, because I hate any sort of bush comms. Like, I just hate them. They're so annoying.
Why would you hate them? What the fuck?
Well, because I never, the only time I ever did a bush comp was down in Curse with rocks, and it was kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm looking forward to get some practice versus Stukas, especially. I'm pretty spooked by Stukas. Just the sheer amount of bombs is just like that can only go wrong in my head. So I'm looking forward to get a Jackdaw fleet or 2 bombed and maybe learn a thing or 2. Should be fun.
That's the scary part about the Stukas, right? You only have to make that one mistake.
Yeah, and you're dead.
And then you pay for it. It does work the other way around, though. So.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I really am looking forward to that.
The thing is, it's getting tricky. Like, it's, I don't want to give anything away, but the hard part is when you don't fight Stukas alone. Right? If you have to take 2 fleets into account, and you can't just do normal Stuka counter things, whatever that might be, and you have to consider fighting something else at the same time. And then you can get distracted, and boom, it's over quick then.
Yeah, Solar Fleet had used to do things like that. They would take like AHAX and also Armor BS at the same time. So you would try and fight to counter the Armor BS, and then you'd get ravaged by these AHAX. So then you try and fight the AHAX, and you get ravaged by the Armor BS.
Oh, you remember maybe one time, very early on, X47. I think the Keepster was down. I don't know. We extracted some stuff. And you were there in like a 200-man unit fleet, and we were in a, 100-man Stuka fleet or so. And I actually set up a trap for you, and you didn't take it. And I lined my guys out thinking, it's not happening. And then you actually took it, but we were too far out of range. So I fucked up, and you fucking murdered all my bombers way too quick with all these mutants. I was so fucking mad about this. It was perfect to wipe out that entire fleet, and I couldn't because I fucked up, right? It's kind of funny.
I am looking forward to that stuff. So yeah, I'm generally very happy about this deployment, and I'm hoping that we get some content out of it. Gonna really show us as well, if how the shape of NC. Sort of. The testing was a bit, like, I don't know, man. The whole test origin thing just seemed a bit unprepared, and it wasn't. Once we had the groove down of coordinating, the problem for us in the North is usually like not the individual alliances' performance, but like the coordination between all of us. Because we don't have the same infrastructure as the Imperium, especially the Goon part of it. So for us, it's always a coordination issue. But usually when we've got that sort of hammered in, things start to go pretty well. And that's pretty much what happened with the test origin and deployments. There were some defeats early on that were mostly because of bad coordination or just bad decisions, like that H-5 Keepstar. And then, as we sort of started coordinating in a proper way, we basically didn't give them any shot. And now that we're already pretty good at working together, I think this init deployment can be a nice opportunity for us to see what we can really pull.
After what will be? I don't even know, but like. After the war in the North, at least, I think it was Asher saying it. The best way to damage PanFam is actually just leaving them alone for now, right? And I think I agreed at that time too. But now that you fought, test anyway.
Yeah.
Not
wrong.
What's the point in waiting longer?
Right after X-47, fucking Horde just went up, GOTG and all that stuff. Yeah, it's definitely always a bit tricky when you leave a coalition like this on their own when they don't have an enemy to fight. I had some very interesting conversations with some other Goon CSM members about this at the summer. You can't it's not in Goon's best interest to evict the North, because if they kill, we're effectively, even though we are weaker than them, effectively right now we are the only real opponent they have left. And if they come and kill us completely, which is very hard to do in the first place, killing people is very hard in EVE these days. But at that point, they've sort of they've defeated or removed the only real opponent from the game for them. So it is you have to find the right point of how much do you beat them down until you leave them alone again. And I feel like that's exactly what they did with the whole X-47 thing. They killed a bunch of Keepstars, they gave us a good beating, and then they left us alone. If they would have kept pushing, we might have fallen over, and then they were just sitting down in Delft with literally 0 people left to really contest them.
We really wanted to keep pushing,
I know
from an init perspective.
Yeah, initiative did.
We were so ready for this.
I think init is fine. You guys probably could have kept pushing.
Yeah, that's what we... Yeah, I think so. I think the advantage we have, we have been on these long-term campaigns a lot, right? We don't do these 2-week, 3-week, maybe 2-month kind of things. We usually, stick with something for way longer. So we were pacing ourselves in that war the entire time, right? We didn't go all in right away. We were there for the long shot. And then suddenly, Asher and the other guys were like, maybe it's fine and we should just, turn around.
Suddenly 40,000.
That was disappointing. That was really disappointing.
Yeah. Oh, we should be able to have some fun.
I think actually after that deal was made for the cessation of hostilities, Initiative had their own emergency meeting to even decide if they were going to abide by it.
Well, so it's not OPSEC anymore. We left all the Imperium core channels at the time because there was a deal on the, Bliss was informed about it. I didn't even know about it. But in Bliss eyes, it wasn't decided. So, he didn't sign anything off or anything. There was just this, general, proposal of an agreement, basically. And he thought, well, before anything is, set in stone, there's going to be some, agreement, and then they, might post something, and then suddenly this thing is posted by Aerith, And that rubbed me the wrong way too, right? Like FC's putting in all the work, and we get to know about it on Reddit. It just came across so bad, right? And then for what Faction 4 disaster, it was even worse. So we left all the core channels and just to set up, just to send a sign. I mean, everyone in Imperium already knows probably that I'm not the biggest fan of any coalition. I see the necessity, but that's it. So I think from my point of view, it's probably not a surprise. But I was surprised that Blizz actually told us to, quit the quads, and he's going to handle it, and he did. There was no. It's not like drama or any of that stuff, but it's just not how you treat your allies, right?
I mean, it's always frustrating when an FC team puts in like a substantial amount of work, and then someone else tries to co-opt a little bit of credit for it or change things. Because as FCs and campaign coordinators and whatever, it's a tremendous amount of work that you guys put in to running these things. So I can imagine it's like endlessly frustrating if someone like ruins it for you.
Well, I wouldn't say ruined. It's just it was a mix of things. Obviously, like we were ready to go. We were looking forward to actually marching down the enemy and stuff like this. And like I said, I didn't know about any agreement even being on the table at the moment. I'm actually surprised. Like I don't get this whole thing anyway. Like if you lose a war, like why would you take an agreement like this? I would never do that, right? I think we as like in it in general, we would never like pay someone to leave us alone. Like it's just so weird to me. Right? So I wasn't even expecting it even. Right?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to like there's some people do things for the memes, right? So they're able to say like, "Oh, we metagame Sword Dragon, they're giving us Delve."
I know. And it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny, especially if you think about the faction forts, that they are the original faction forts, like from those stations, from that old goon space and so on. Like I get it, right? There's a sentimental value to it. Obviously, like whatever sum of ISK they would pay, it doesn't even make that much of a difference from an Imperium point of view. Like ISK is not what we're starting wars for.
Yeah, especially. I mean, you can't boast about how you're making more money in the game than anyone else, and then make an agreement for money, right? Like that doesn't work. So it's all about the be able to memes, be able to be like, hey, look how big of a force we are. We made this guy give us essentially Dell, blah blah blah. But you guys rebounded really quickly. You had your Hard Knocks campaign after that, right?
Which was fucking amazing, by the way. I love you guys so much for that. Fucking us, man.
Well, half of you loves us for it, and the other half hates us.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just glad that once more the dominance of 0-0 over every other sector of the game has been proven, even if it was from somebody from the other side of the aisle.
Well, that the Wormhole guys, they're always trying to play the quality card. You know what I mean? Once they're in their Wormhole, and then you come in and actually kill them. It's yes, on the final timer they didn't have a chance, obviously, and we didn't plan on giving them one anyway. So, but yeah, people hate us, people love us for it. It was all good, I think.
And you're talking about the attack on HKs, and that's a Wormhole Corporation, Wormhole Alliance. Yeah, Wormhole Alliance is a wormhole, and you evicted them out of there, burning down all their structures and destroying a good portion of their wealth.
Yep.
And so, Killah B, I suppose you like it because anytime nullsec can put their foot on wormholers, you're happy?
I mean, not necessarily just on wormholers. I just really believe in, I really hope, because at the end of the day, the stuff that makes the headlines for CCP come mostly out of 0-0 or is generated by people from 0-0. And I just want to, I just love sort of the idea of 0-0 being this big blob of people that can pretty much deal with any other sector in the game whenever they want to. It's an incredibly unpopular opinion to have, and it's mostly just role playing. So please do not hate me for it. But yeah, the whole concept behind the invasion of rage and everything, I just loved it. Like thinking about the implications of that and everything, it just gave me a lot of joy. Even though I wasn't a part of it, I sort of just followed it on Reddit and I had a good time with it. Obviously, I know that high sec, low sec, and wormhole space are also important for the game, and the people that want to play that way, perfectly fine by me. But at the end of the day, I'm still a big fan of 0-0. I've been playing in 0-0 for pretty much my entire EVE life, and which is half my real life as well, by the way. So I just like I just like 0-0.
The funny part was that came out of all that was the whole narrative of ravens being able to easily kill keepsters and stuff, and I'm just sitting here face palming. I'm like, what the fuck are you guys even talking about? Like, it's so hard to kill keepsters with subcaps, right? We needed an entire 250-man fleet just to keep the fucking thing paused and revved. Like 250, that's not easy. Like, and now these memes on Reddit and all these F1 drones thinking they know it all and post their big fucking ideas about what's OP and what's not and stuff. That's like so crazy to me, right? Like people talk about the bush ravens killing keepsters left, right, and center everywhere in EVE. Like, I don't see it. Like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? Like 250 dudes, that's what you need just to pause it, and then you have to win the fight too if there's a fight, right?
Guys, one person did it. That means that's the counter to everything. The counter to keepstar proliferation is just a few ravens.
Do you remember, Elise, when we were like memeing on everybody with Sleipnirs through wormholes in 2015, and suddenly everybody in the universe thought Sleipnirs were like the best doctrine in the game? And every time somebody brought Sleipnirs to a fleet battle, they got completely trashed, and they were like, "Wait, but PL is doing it. Why can't we do it?" Like, that's not how it works, man.
Yeah, it's always fun, and I'm sure Pando, you can talk to this because you've seen so many people copy your version of bombers and bushing, and when they just don't completely understand the concept, and arguably probably almost no one else really completely understands it the same way that Initiative do. But when you see someone trying to recreate something that you've made or have perfected in a way, it's hilarious because they screw up and you can exploit it really, really, really well.
Yeah, it's this thing. Like, people will catch up, I believe, and the whole bush meta. People think it's invincible. There's a lot of ways to hurt a bush feed really, really well, and there's a ton of risk involved whenever you do a bush lead because you're all anchored on that one little spot, and a lot of groups that tried had to pay that price for that risk already, right? And it's discouraging too. And I think our advantage was we have been flying like Snatch and all these other bush comps for so long, so our guys are very used to it, and we have a lot of experience with it. But also opponents, like our hostiles, they also have experience dealing with them to some degree, right? So people who now starting out doing these kind of fleets, they might run into groups that are actually kind of used to fighting us, and we know like a lot of tricks, and then they catch them, right? And they think, oh shit, it doesn't work and we can't do it. But it's a learning process, right? I think we're a little bit ahead in the bush game, but people will catch up at some point.
Is that your favorite like new module that's come out in the last 10 years?
For sure.
I remember when it was like first announced, and then we were thinking like, wait, what if you do two of them at once? What happens? Like, and then just this light bulb goes off.
Yeah, I right away used them in like small scale fleets to test it out and stuff, and I instantly realized, holy shit, like you can do some awesome stuff with it.
I remember
we failed a lot of times too.
I remember like 2 days after they came out, I had a Bifrost or something. I was roaming with my old corp at the time through some space, and nobody had ever seen a bush before because it was just out very new. And I don't know if it was pre-Citadels or not, but we were basically just bushing people off their stations that they warped to because they didn't see it coming at all. We got so many kills on that roam, it was insane. Yeah.
I'm telling you, the first couple Snatch fleets we showed up, it was hilarious. Like, you wouldn't even believe it. Like, nobody was prepared for it. You just show up and you, like, whatever you wanted to kill, you could just warp to it, push it off and kill it, because like all these guys like kills left, right, and center, and obviously that helped us a lot too, because it's easy to get people in fleet then if they have like fun to no end, and it's fairly cheap and stuff. So that thing got hyped, and we got a lot of experience very quickly. So yeah.
There was a lot of kidnappings happening right after that module came out, right? I think I remember groups kidnapping people off of stations quite a bit.
Is that called kidnapping? I didn't know that.
No, it's not an official EVE term.
Catching FCs and stuff, like you can use it very tactically, and it was used quite a lot to either separate fleets or try and take FCs out of fleets as well.
One of my sorry.
Oh, you can go.
One of my favorite things that we tried was, so in the Snatch fleet, it's completely based on Magus, basically, right? So let's say you have 50 dudes, it's probably 20, 30 Magus. So the whole tactic of killing all the Commander Destroyers, it's not gonna get you that far. And also you have so many MJDs, you can do a lot of awesome stuff. So one of the things was I would have everyone anchored on me, and then I MJD into hostiles, and then I have all these guys that are anchored in an orbit on me, MWD and MJD. So if you're in the middle of that hostile blob, they're getting spread out all over the grid, and you can't really do anything about it. But it's more like a supportive kind of thing. But it's like, it just looks so fucking awesome, and it's so fun, and it must be so shit for the hostile FC to suddenly have, like, I don't know, 13 different spots where your fleet is.
Hey, if it gets to Cancer, I'll just have all my ships fit Sinos and like 200 Sinos.
You know what? TC did that. Yeah, Culture did that actually, and it was too funny. Because only half of their fleet actually lit the Sino, the other half didn't do it in time, or they didn't have ozone and stuff like this. So it was just too funny, because they basically killed themselves with it, because you can't just then they're all stuck, and then half the fleet is getting pushed. It's like even worse then.
And then you had everybody scram chain each other, so you had fleets actually unfitting mids and fitting scrams, and then fitting up scram partners.
And then there's that one guy. Bushing. Yeah, there's that one guy who doesn't scram. So you jump in, you boosh, and then see maybe someone's not paying attention, and then boom, you jump that one guy off. Then the ECM burst. So there's a lot of ways to doing funny stuff with it. Then.
Yeah, I remember Snuff's version of dealing with it. Well, at the time was for their Guardians, because their Guardian just kept getting booshed off in low sec. So they're just like, you know what, we're going to drop our ECCM in the mid slot for this Guardian, this two mid slot Guardian. And we're going to put a scram in there and just scram chain all of our Guardians as well as cap chain.
Did that work?
I mean, they were all scrammed together, and they didn't get booshed.
It works to some degree. I mean, there has to be not just one ECM burst. Right? And then it doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, that's the counter. You can get jammed really easily. So, but yeah, the whole module is really fun. Like, I remember when it was fairly new, and Ron USMC in chat brings this up. Whenever we were like super outnumbered fighting tests, like whenever they'd bring everything they could in, we'd come in with like a skirmish fleet and just literally just probe out whatever Pro God was in. So it was usually like a vulture. No one else was flying a vulture, so it was easy to get a hit. So we'd come in like 600 kilometers off, boosh him 100 off his fleet, and just try and kill him before his fleet can get back.
Yeah, we did like headshot booshes like a couple times. It's always tricky though, right? It's always a risk if you go very close, especially with Snatch. If you take the whole fleet with you, you might just lose people people are left behind, and then they're easy kills then for hostiles. But you could always MJD in, pin that one guy down, scramble as many of the other guys as you can, and then start filtering. You keep jumping and then scramble, and you leave people behind on every jump. And it's funny. Even like no matter the numbers, that's the big point, right? If you have 50 dudes and then like a 200-man battleship fleet of some sort, you can do something. That's the big advantage. You might not always come out on top, right? We like lost a lot of fleets too. I remember one time we defended in our 4 design. I warped on 0, thinking like, it's gonna be all right. And then NC Dot actually all had smart bombs fit, and we just all died in an instant. And our first reaction was like, holy shit, that lag, might be fuckery involved. But actually I checked the fits, and they were actually all smart bomb fit. So yeah, it was a painful lesson.
So there have been surprises on both sides of the
For sure.
fights.
There's another
That's what
great
makes it
use
so interesting.
of that module that you see in Delve all the time, where someone will put together a little group of storks or command destroyers, and they'll go into a system with Rorquals mining, or they'll log into the system already in the belt, ready to go. And they'll go up to, they'll ignore the Rorquals because they can't really do anything to them, and that's not their intention. And they'll go instead for the excavators, and they'll chain boost them, boom, 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 with a bunch of jumps until they get outside of control range of the original Rorqual. And since the excavators move so slowly, they move like an old lady with a walker trying to cross the street. So they're hard to pull in quickly if you're in the wrong system and belt when the guy logs in. But they'll jump them far enough out of your control range that they can then scoop them into a waiting industrial.
You have to scoop them, and then so you have to MJD them and then jam them, so they don't reapproach. Then if they're out of range and jammed, they're not gonna go back to the Rorqual.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a couple of dudes actually, like 5-6 dudes who did that when it first came up, when the range was still like 300 km, because it's way easier. Right now it's 500, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, or 600 even. So it's way harder to MJD like a full set of drones, 600 km, because you have to imagine if you warp in, you're still moving, and taking that many MJDs takes also time. And in that time, they are reapproaching, and you're approaching away from the Rorqual, right? So you have to do everything right. You might limit your speeds, but is everyone limiting the speed correctly and stuff like this? So, it's not that easy. It's not like a free, like, just warp in, press F1 kind of thing. You have to do everything perfectly. It has to be executed well to actually work reliably. But yeah, with good practice, those are some good ticks, I would guess.
Well, so what when it originally came out, that mechanic was seen as I don't know if it was controversial. I think some people thought it was too weird mechanic. Same with the Hand of God that allows you to throw ships, to teleport ships 100K away.
You know what? The GTFO, you mean?
Yeah, GTFO.
So I never got the whole discussion about that. I've never seen one. I've never seen one. Like, I've never seen it work on any of my fleets.
About him, because when the Goons came to Hakonen in 2017, it was one of the big fights in 2017 over one of the staging forts that Goons tried to drop. And it was a 10% tie-dye fight, and we chained GTFO'd his fleet. So basically, they were on grid all anchored up. We GTFO'd them. They were like literally 30 AU away or something. They had to work back to the fight, 30 AU and 10% tie-dye. So it took them like half an hour. And then as they landed back on grid, we immediately GTFO'd them again. And we just kept doing that for the entire fight. So that's why he's so mad about it, because we just kept chain GTFOing him off grid. And he just was pretty much the entire like 4-hour fight or whatever. He was busy warping back to the fight grid instead of actually getting to fight.
Yeah,
that's why he hates the module so much.
But in general, like, nobody's using them really. No. Like, I'm a very active FC. Like, the last year, I would say I was very active, and I've not seen a single one. So to say it's OP, I think that requires at least for a good chunk of people actually using them. Like, if it's OP, people will use it, right? At least to some degree. But I didn't see a single one, so.
I don't think anyone's ever complained about the GTFO besides Pro-God either, so that's just his thing.
Yeah, but he was so loud. It sounded like a lot of people.
Pro-God, man. I mean, he managed to post himself to the fucking CBSC or whatever it's called. Yeah, that's just what Pro-God is. He's just loud. That's all.
Now, there was another potential use of that module. Well, there was going to be a version for structures. and they ended up not putting that out, if I remember correctly. And I think that would have seen a lot of use, though. But you're right. I don't remember an Imperium supercap fleet where they told us to fit those things.
There was a very swift period of time where there was a little exploit or a bug where you could basically untether capitals from citadels by using the GTFO. That may or may not have been used a couple of times, but it has been fixed. So, yeah, that's that pretty much. So, basically the only reason to ever fit a GTFO would be if you're in low sec, because you can't use any of the other AOEDD. So, like 2 weeks ago, I defended PL Raitaru or Astra in Ope from a Goon Ferox fleet. And basically what I did is, because I wasn't able to break Feroxes with my single Titan, what I did is I GTFO'd their Logis because they were anchored up in a blob, and then I started killing Feroxes. And I killed like 4 Feroxes by the time the Logis landed back on grid. So that's like the
but
occasional
why didn't the Feroxes just spread out then? Why didn't the Feroxes just spread out then? Like, what's the range on it anyway? I didn't even look at it.
It's 100 km. And the radius... the radius is like 10 km or something.
See, like just orbit the anchor at like 15, boom, you're golden. Yeah, or warp back in at like different ranges, 0, 10, 20. Like, what you're gonna do? Like, yeah, maybe like 10 of your dudes are getting GTFO'd again, but it's not it's very easy to counter when you're aware. Like, if you get surprised with it, it can be painful, obviously, but it's not OP.
We call the module GTFO, and the full name is, I'm just going to read it out once because people have been asking in Twitch chat. It's Gravitational Transportation Field Oscillator, or Oscillator. Yes.
It's not a coincidence, right? Some dev had some fun there.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
GTFO.
Tongue in cheek with CCP. It's basically get the fuck out. But they managed to give it, just like skins, right? They managed to give it an acronym that works.
Well, it's like the bosonic field generator. It's BFG.
Yeah, throwback to do. And my favorite all time was the Target Painters, like the different named version of Target Painter.
Yeah, the meta versions. That was fun.
Yeah.
All right,
we're gonna make you look them up.
So, okay, I could listen to FC's talk all day long and understand only a portion of it, but it is exciting to see like just how the top level of tactics, what goes on in their minds and some of the things they run into. So that stuff is always fascinating. We have one last thing that we want to cover, though, before we go, and that is I know we said we were going to cover test and how the campaign's going for them in the South since they went back there. We were going to have Headliner on the show. We'll have him on again at some point. But does anybody know about the South? Because I am not up on it. I think there was 2 failed drops by ProGod on LX TAC Z.
What do you want to talk about right now? Sorry, I was also saving Rorquals at the same time.
Oh, are you actually
piloting?
Yes.
All right.
So what did you want to talk about?
At least this time I was able to show up, right? Not like last time.
That is hilarious. All right. So while we're doing the show, these FCs over here are actually fighting and saving things. No, actually, this is the space violence campaign. Space violence moved out of where you moved into, right, Pando? Dark Shines?
Yes. Yeah. They were staged in Hakonen, and they now moved all their shit into Venal, into PF Tech specifically, which can send them to various different locations if they wanted to. So it's a very interesting.
So are you coordinating with space violence?
Well, they're good friends, right? We're good friends with Kenda, so we might just I mean, it's not a surprise to NC anyway, right? But yeah, they're just there to have fun. They always do their own thing, and if things work out, they work out, and yeah, if not, then they don't work out, right?
SV are great.
It's not like it's not like we bank on their firepower or they bank on us doing certain stuff. It's just we do our own thing, and if our interests are the same, like we might just work together, right?
Right. So Venal is further north. So Tribute is basically between Venal and where you are, Initiative, which is northern Lonetrek. And I imagine you guys are hunting rorquals and looking for things to do. Is there an overall goal, or are you guys really just getting the fights that you can?
That's one of those questions that nobody's going to answer.
Is it?
Well, so
Yeah, sure.
I can say
if it breaks, we meant to do it all along.
A lot of the things we do are just for content. Sometimes there's not a huge amount of deeper meaning behind.
we want to prevent DEF 2.0, right? That's one thing.
Well, I've got great news. I have a strong feeling that your campaign to prevent DEF 2.0 has been a success. Which is actually, like, as I was pointing out earlier, like the difference between a more chaotic deployment and like a more sophisticated deployment is, as an FC and content creator, you guys can have like a goal that's kind of nebulous but also exciting for line members to get them entertained by it without setting too high of a ceiling that you can't reach it, right? So if your goal is we're going to completely obliterate the North, then in like 3 months you're going to be most likely failures, right? But if your goal is we're going to prevent something that's not happening, then you get to be like, yo, look, we did it, we accomplished it, boosh. So, and then not to say that you're like moving goalposts or anything, because that's not it at all, but like just the message that you send to your line members to keep that activity, to keep that excitement to wherever you go. It's a huge part of being incredibly successful, which is, I think no one would argue that initiative hasn't been incredibly successful the last 2 or 3 years.
I think the decision to go for Tribute or PL and NCR are because you guys are probably one of the bigger, most competent guys that we can shoot, or that we like shooting. But then a week and a half ago-ish, I think, to get a copy of the Pandemic Horde ping that told all their Rorquals and Supers to move to SH1 for safe mining space. Kind of made us all giggle quite a lot.
I mean, yeah, there would have been easier targets out there for sure. And even like so we moved our deployment actually by a day. And when we moved our deployment on that op where it actually was planned, I actually dropped a line saying, oh yeah, also they're already expecting us to go south, right? Pretending I'm leaking stuff, and everyone went crazy about it. And I think south would have been a way easier target, right? Like skill yourself, or like, I don't know, fraternity or whoever, right? Like somewhere in that area. Anything would have been probably easier, to be quite honest. If you look at the map, I don't know what could have been a harder target. I don't know. I mean, other than leaving Imperium. Yeah, that's the only target that would be harder, right? So, yeah, there would have been way easier targets out there, but we decided to go for NC and PL, or PenFam in general, right?
Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys. The last thing we'll talk about is Brangita, and it's happening. It's probably finishing up now. It'll be over by the time this hits broadcast tonight. What do we have statistics on how many things they killed? Do we care?
Most of the day one thing, I'm not sure. Day one, it was like 230 billion-esque, I think.
That's usually the big day, right?
So we'll see what the total sum is.
Well, probably in there's some comedy kill mails from the attacker's point of view. Some people who weren't expecting it to happen because they don't watch programs like this or listen to Eve Uni when they put out broadcasts to play it safe around Jita. It's a big game out there. A lot of people don't have access to the information or want access to all this extra information, so they're caught by surprise, and a lot of them are seeing seeing what a nullsec alliance can do in high sec, and that's kind of what Bernjita has always been. It's a show of force from nullsec to try to shut down the game's main trade hub.
It's just a vehicle to grief, dudes, right? Like that's it's a cultural thing. I definitely appreciate it. This year it seemed like, I don't want to say lackluster, but it seemed smaller than usual. I don't know what it is. Maybe because I'm not near Jita at all, so I just don't experience it.
Yeah.
But in previous years, it seemed to be like way more widespread, way more chaotic. Now maybe people are a little bit too informed, so they know it's coming. But my favorite part is that a bunch of the goon characters, that like people definitely made characters just for it. And they go with the naming scheme, beep boop, and then a bunch of ones and zeros. And it just brings me endless joy to see just my mental image. And I said this in a thread somewhere. Like, I have this mental image of like 100 goons sitting in like a LAN cafe or something, all yelling beep boop as they like kill a freighter. And it just makes me laugh. If you're sad and you need to smile, just imagine like a bunch of goons yelling beep boop.
I think we have a recording of somebody yelling that. Astrathi's son doing it. It's pretty funny. Yeah, listen, Market Tycoon, I don't know if we have a narrative on a lot of high sec people don't follow the meta or whatever. I honestly don't know what 75% of this game does. Like, they must do the biggest fight this game has ever seen was 9TAC 4 that had over 10,000 people engaged in it, and there was more than 30,000 people online. So there's a lot of other people in the game, and we don't know what they do or what really surprises them. But yeah, so there's no narrative there. But there, yeah, Bernjita is back. It's over, and I just don't think there's much to say on it unless you guys have something.
I'm with Elise on this one. I like it. I think it's a cool event. Last year I joined it even, but this year I didn't really have the chance because I just got back on Saturday from the summit, Saturday evening and such, so I didn't get the chance to join the Bernjita. They're usually pretty open. Like last year I was just hanging out on comms, on the goon comms, and shooting freighters with them. Jay invited me, and then I spoke for some reason. I said something for some reason, and like a lot of the goons started freaking out. Wait, was that Kirby? And I was like, yeah, what's up, guys? And then they were like, what is he doing here? You know, it's kind of funny. I like the event in general. It's a bit like I said earlier about the inner thing in HK's home wormhole. I do appreciate projecting power into the other sectors of the game.
Yeah. At that point, it is kind of a null-sec beating on everybody else in the game, making their life hard for a few days. It does seem like a griefing thing, doesn't it? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that was the whole point of when they first started it. And then it became like an economic thing where they'd buy up all the jump freighters like a week before, then announce when it was happening and only target jump freighters and then relist them. So they made a bunch of money that way. But you know, it's part of the culture of the game, right? To have these little things. So I'm glad that it exists. I also have never lost anything to Gang Cheetah, so I'm probably not. I just watch people die, and of course I like it.
Go ahead, Dark.
We deployed. Obviously we deployed during the week, but especially on, was it Friday when Bernjita started? We've got a bunch of jump freighters in Jita ready to jump stuff over to Hakonen. And it was just a bit too risky because 10% tie-dye in Jita. Like, if you have any issues on docking, you know, there's a chance you get blapped on the on-dock as well. So it was interesting.
So even your own guys.
Yeah,
there are people in the Imperium who don't follow the meta too. I bet you some of those lost freighters are actually alts of people in the Imperium who paid no attention and didn't pay, have no idea why they got shot. Also, shout out to Jade Cougar in the audience. Thank you. Hi.
Ari, who did a lot of seeding for the Rage thing too, just winged it and moved Jump Freighter through. Like, we have that blue list, but you never know. And then she got tackled with her Jump Freighter and thought, oh shit, so this list doesn't work. But apparently there's some random dudes just, bumping, tackling and stuff, because they don't know about the list, right? And so we are still able to move some jump freighters, but it's a fucking risk for sure. And then during the campaign start, oh god.
I'm told you could just pay DBRB and then your freighter is safe. So you should get on that.
How much have you sent him so far?
I mean, it's only $5 billion, but it's fine. I've got this pass, so I can move my freighter in peace. Actually, I have no idea what he pretends to charge. But
from one EVE player to another, paying ransoms isn't a good idea. I know from experience. All right. That brings us to the end of the show. We did cover the CSM Summit and some of the stuff that's in there. Amsterdam's coming up on March 21st. Look for announcements there. The MER shows that 140 trillion has been banned out of the game, which is a ton of ISK if you think about it. We were able to cover the initiative and the NC. Conflict and where that's going, and some of the doctrines around bushing. I want to thank Dark Shines and Pando and Killah, the FCs involved in that fight, and Elise, Randolph, and Carneros for joining me today. I'm going to open up just a minute here if you guys have any last messages you want to send out to people.
Come join us in the public channel after the show.
That's a good one. And any of you guys, Elise, Dark, or Pando?
Well, shout out to the guys that subbed. I know some people are giving away subs. A great way to support the content of Talking in Station.
Oh, yeah. That deserves to be said on the air. And hard name to say because it starts with X, Y, Z, I think. I'll have to find it. It's not handy. But thank you for gifting out so many subs. It's kind of funny who he was gifting them to. All these guys around in random. Really appreciate that kind of generosity. It goes to the station. And again, thanks, Pando, for coming. Thanks, Dark.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Always great to have you guys. Thank you very much. And Killah too.
Anytime.
Goodbye.
All right, that does it for us. Come meet us in the public channel right after the show every Sunday. We're about to jump into there. I want to say thanks again for watching, all you guys. We will see you next time on Talking in Stations.